Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of This Week in the Clinic. So happy to be back. Can't wait to get into today's material. We're talking all about digestion, a super important topic. I think everyone and their dog maybe have digestive issues or had digestive issues at some point or will have digestive issues at some point. So we've got a big topic to cover today. Some cool things I want to cover, and we're going to get right into it. So before we get started, I just want to introduce myself for those of you who might be joining me for the first time. I'm Josh Gitalis. I'm a clinical nutritionist and a functional medicine practitioner, and I have a clinic here in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, where I run my practice, and I also run a functional nutrition certification program, 100% online, and we have students from all over the world that take part in it. And we're starting with another group in September. So that's how I spend my time. And of course, I also spend a little bit of time doing these Facebook Lives to, bring the information that I learn in my clinic, working with real humans over the week, to you guys so that you can benefit from it. And that's what This Week in the Clinic is all about. And we've had some amazing guests. We've had some killer topics covered. You can check all those replays on my Facebook page or on my YouTube page at any point. And today we're talking about solutions for reflux, bloating, gas, and burping. I think we've all had one of these at one point. And today I'm going to explain why, when you're at that party and you maybe get a little bit of, the technical word is flatus. It's not you, it's actually the bacteria. So that could be your excuse next time. And I want to arm you with some really great excuses for those embarrassing moments. And that's what part of today is all about. So also, for those of you who are joining early and just joining me at all, we're going to be doing a giveaway. So I want to let you know that I'm going to be giving away a bottle of my Digestive Bitters. We're going to be talking all about Digestive Bitters a little bit later on. But if you comment in the comment box, participate in our live stream, I will add you to our random draw, and we will ship you, if you win, a bottle of Digestive Bitters. And it's only applicable to those of you in Canada and the US, because we don't want to pay $200 to send it to the Antarctic. It wouldn't be in our budget here. So we're going to get into talking all about digestion. Now, I just want to, for those of you who are joining me, give me unfortunately, this is the option, a thumbs up if you've had some digestive issue. And also, I'd like to know if you've had a digestive issue that you've healed yourself from or found a solution for. Let me know what it is in the comment box. And finally, if you have any questions as we go along here, I'll be happy to answer them closer to the end. And you can also put those in the comment box as well. So, first of all, I just want to bring forth a statistic that was quite staggering when I looked it up. That the number of visits to physician offices, hospital, outpatient, and emergency departments with diseases of the digestive system as primary diagnosis are 51 million. That's a staggering number. So what's actually going on here? I mean, why are so many people dealing with digestive issues? And what I like to say is that basically everything begins and ends in the digestive tract, right? The food we eat that we bring in comes in through the mouth and enters at the exit door. And a lot happens in between. And this is how we get sustenance. This is how we get what our beautiful sun has created for us in the earth and the air in these forms of plants and animals to give us these packaged forms of energy and sustenance so that we can live and thrive in our world, right? But we have to be able to liberate all those nutrients from our from our food through our digestive tract. And that's a very important process. And it's associated, when it doesn't work properly, with a lot of different illnesses. In fact, we're going to get into those and talk about those in a moment. okay? And we're really going to focus on what goes on in the stomach with stomach acid and how that plays into it. So before I actually get going, I just want to share with you a story. This is actually a story I don't think I've shared too many times in public, and it tells a little bit about some digestive issues I dealt with. In fact, last week we had Joy on the show, and she was so kind to share with us her story of how she kind of got into the health field. And it's, I think, important to understand that all of us as practitioners and educators have our own stories as to how we got into this and why we're doing what we're doing. We didn't just wake up one day and we were super healthy. So back in what I call my first life, this is before I got into the health field, I had some pretty serious digestive issues. It was mainly reflux and indigestion. And the name that the medical community gives to it is GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disorder. So I went to my doctor and I said, doc, I've got all this burning, I've got all these issues, what's actually going on here? And he basically sent me for a whole bunch of tests. I went for an endoscopy, so they sent a camera down my throat. I went for a barium x-ray. They looked at my insides. I went for an H. pylori breath test. And lo and behold, what they found was basically there was some some irritation in my esophageal sphincter, which is the little hole that kind of blocks your esophagus from the stomach. What was the solution? The solution was a prescription for Antacids, which at first didn't really work, and then stronger prescriptions for stronger antacids, eventually leading me to take a drug called Nexium, also known as the purple pill, which is a proton pump inhibitor. This pill basically shuts off stomach acid. And about a year later, I had a dentist appointment, and I had 7 cavities. I had never had a cavity in my life. And there's a reason why this happened. We can't actually absorb minerals too well when we shut off stomach acid, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So a few clinical cues of why we might not have enough stomach acid. So oftentimes people have this burning and they think it's too much stomach acid. In fact, there's various commercials that sort of capitalize on the symptoms and make you think. So let's take a look at one.
When you get nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, even diarrhea. Hey, there's Pepto-Bismol. Nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea.
Yay, Pepto-Bismol!
Nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea.
Yay, Pepto-Bismol!
Nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea.
Yay, Pepto-Bismol!
Now you know, Pepto.
All right, so see, they make these cute little jingles out of all these symptoms. And of course, you could just take something to kind of deal with the symptoms, but you're really not getting to the root cause. And oftentimes the root cause is what we call low stomach acid or hypochloridria. So some clinical cues for low stomach acid are bloating, burping, and flatulence, diarrhea, like what we just saw there, upset stomach, a feeling of fullness, the feeling that food kind of sits there for hours. When people say, oh, it's been sitting there for so long, I don't feel like I'm digesting my food. Allergies can be associated with low stomach acid. Nausea after supplementation. So sometimes people take a multivitamin or minerals and they kind of get nauseous. They can't really deal with the minerals properly. Itchy bum, which is related to a state of dysbiosis related to hydrochloric acid. Weak nails, okay, which is related to how we absorb minerals, which we're going to get into. Acne, iron deficiency. Iron needs a very acidic environment in order to be absorbed properly. Intestinal infections, and even undigested food. Now, some of you might think that, hey, if I'm not digesting my food properly, that's probably not such a big deal. I can just take some Pepto-Bismol. I can just, take an antacid or something. But what we found in the research is that low stomach acid is actually associated with a whole slew of different conditions. And I'm going to read the list. I'm going to read it fast because it's a long list and then we can move on. But Addison's disease, asthma, celiac, autoimmune diseases of all types, hives, dermatitis, diabetes, eczema, gallbladder disease, Graves' disease, hepatitis, thyroid issues, lupus, osteoporosis, pernicious anemia, psoriasis, rheumatoid arthritis, rosacea, Sjögren's syndrome, thyrotoxicosis, and vitiligo. That's a lot of conditions. And that's what the research has shown us. There's a pretty strong connection between that. So what do we do? What do we do for healing the stomach? Well, the first thing that we don't do is take an antacid, because there are various risks associated with antacids that I want to get into right now. So the key one is, or one of the top prescribed antacids is called Nexium. So that was the one I was on regarding my story at the beginning there. And it basically shuts off stomach acid by 99%. And we need stomach acid to actually break down our food properly in the stomach, liberate minerals. There's a process called ionization. So typically in food, minerals occur together, like sodium chloride likes to be together, but potassium chloride, for example. You eat a piece of celery, you've got potassium in there, you've got chloride. They like to be together because they have a charge. Okay, not to get into the chemistry too much, but those have to be disassociated, and that's called ionization. And in order to do that, you need really good stomach acid. Okay? Without the stomach acid, that's not going to happen, and you're not going to absorb minerals. So that could obviously lead to a whole bunch of other issues, because minerals, they build a lot of our tissues. They're cofactors in a lot of enzymes, and without them, our body just doesn't work. They're the nuts and bolts of the body. So we need that good stomach acid in order to digest properly. So then Nexium shuts it off completely. And again, Nexium is another drug. It's the second top-selling drug. So you can do whatever you want. You can eat whatever way you want. You can eat whatever you want, and you can just take Nexium. And again, they have these commercials regarding Nexium.
My kids call me the finisher. Finish up in there.
Okay.
Finish your homework?
Yes.
Finish your vegetables. Something I thought I was finished with? Managing my acid reflux disease. I thought it was just bad heartburn, but my doctor said over time, stomach acid was damaging the lining of my esophagus.
So what actually happens is that it's not that there's too much stomach acid, it's that there's not enough stomach acid, believe it or not, but it feels like the symptoms of too much stomach acid. And what happens is that when you don't have enough stomach acid in your digestive tract, food just sits there. There's a sphincter at the bottom of your stomach called the pyloric sphincter, and it will not open until that stomach is extremely acidic. And once it is, it'll open and it'll let the food go through. But if it doesn't open, if the stomach doesn't get acidic enough, the food just sits there and it ferments, and then you get gas, you get burping, you get the bacteria working on your food for you, fermenting the food, and they create gases, and that wants to go up the esophagus. So what happens is the stomach contents aren't as acidic as they should be, but they're still acidic enough to damage the esophagus. The esophagus is encoded like the stomach lining. Okay? So what has to happen is that sphincter at the top has to stay closed, but it's not because of all that pressure, and then you get that feeling of reflux.
Prescribed Nexium. Said I needed more than heartburn relief. My esophagus needed repair. One prescription Nexium pill a day not only relieves my heartburn, it healed erosions in my esophagus. So I don't just feel better, I am better.
So that is true. So sometimes when people do have erosions, sometimes when people get ulcers, this drug can be helpful for a short period of time. Now, if you look at the insert of Nexium, for example, it actually tells you not to consume it over a long period of time. And I've had clients that come to me that have been on it for years, right? I think the max that they say you should take it is about 6 months, okay? And that's by the manufacturer. So that becomes a really big problem. But then we want to get people off of it and really optimize their digestion.
And with the Purple Plus program, I get advice on nutrition, exercise, even ways to save on Nexium. My doctor did say headache, diarrhea, and abdominal pain could be side effects of Nexium, and other serious stomach conditions may still exist.
Talk to your doctor about...
So there are some serious, as they say in the commercial. I always find the U.S. commercials quite astounding because at the end they tell you all the things that you can die from. But there are some serious side effects with taking these medications, and that's what I just want to present to you. And then we're going to get into the solutions because I never, ever want to leave you hanging, right? You need to know how you can optimize and improve your digestion. And for those of you who've joined late, we're actually giving away a free Digestive Bitters, which I'm going to talk about. So for those of you who comment, those of you who give a thumbs up, those of you who give a heart or participate in any way, you're going to be entered into the draw for our Digestive Bitters, and we'll get to that a little bit later. So, first of all, what are some side effects of proton pump inhibitors and why you should avoid them? And then, again, I'm going to get into all the good things that you can do for your digestive tract. So, first of all, there was a study published in the Archives of Internal Medicine in 2010. It was entitled Iatrogenic Gastric Acid Suppression and the Risk of Nosocomial C. diff Infection. What does nosocomial mean? It's a fancy word for acquired in a hospital. So C. diff is a very virulent bacteria that can create serious digestive upset, and it's actually been known to kill people. And a lot of people get it in the hospital where their defenses are down. And they're showing that people with or on proton pump inhibitors where they're suppressing the stomach acid have a 200% increased risk of getting C. diff infection. Why is that? Because stomach acid actually helps to sterilize the contents and keep a good state of bacteria in the stomach and all along the whole digestive tract. So it's really important that we have that stomach acid there as a sterilizing agent and as part of our immune system. Isn't that interesting? And it also signals and helps every other step along the way. So another study was published, calcium absorption in achloridria in the New England Journal of Medicine, just a small journal, that no one really reads. And what they found is that there's great malabsorption of calcium, iron, and B12. And those are the key nutrients that they looked at with people on PPIs, but we can assume that it's also applicable to all the other nutrients as well. And then another article published in Clinical Gastroenterology and Hepatology. This was in 2006, looking at the use of proton pump inhibitors, and basically it's called interstitial nephritis, where there's some serious damage and acute inflammation in the kidneys. And Dr. Gerard Mullen, who is a gastroenterologist at Johns Hopkins University, points out, and I quote, PPIs causing renal failure is a trade secret, since most gastroenterologists are unaware of this potential toxic effect. End of quote. So it can also damage the kidneys. AstraZeneca, the drug company that actually makes Nexium and proton pump inhibitors, in 2007 did a study that showed that taking proton pump inhibitors increases cardiovascular events. And a little bit later on, Canadian researchers found in 2009 that PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, eliminate the antiplatelet benefit of a drug called Plavix, which is often used in people with heart disease. And then finally, a final reason why we want to not take proton pump inhibitors and get people off as soon as possible is an article published in JAMA in 2006 showed that people on proton pump inhibitors have an increased risk of hip fractures. Now, going back to the story that I shared earlier in this video, when I got prescribed Nexium, the doctor wanted me on it for life. I was in my 20s, and that just never sat right for me. And when I started to study nutrition and look into it, I actually, but way before I got into nutrition, I got off of it. And then when I started to study nutrition, I actually ended up healing my own digestive tract just with some natural remedies. And that's what I want to start to talk about. So there's some really great ways to improve digestion. Some are very, very, very low tech, but things that people often ignore. Now, I just want to check in to see if there's any comments. So Lauren, hey Lauren, so nice of you to join me. She says, I'm watching for my boyfriend going through this. So timely, GERD and H. pylori. I'm so glad you can benefit from this, Lauren, and hopefully your boyfriend will tune in. And yes, I will be talking about how to move on from the PPI. So the first and actually most important thing when it comes to digestion is to be in what's called rest and digest mode. Okay? And this cannot be underestimated. So we're in two modes most of the time. We're in either, well, all of the time we're in one of two modes. We're in rest and digest mode or fight or flight mode. And most of the time people are in fight or flight mode when they're doing their job, when they're working, when they're exercising, when they're driving somewhere, when they're focusing on something, when they're stressed. That's fight or flight mode. And that's a mode that was developed in our body from thousands and thousands of years ago when we needed to survive on this planet. It was a way to either fight, kill that saber-toothed tiger, or flight, run away. And why would you need to turn on digestion in that situation? You wouldn't. So all the blood goes away from the digestive tract into the extremities so that you can act as quick as possible. But of course, when that threat was over, saber-toothed tiger walked away or you killed it, you were able to relax and get back into rest and digest mode and then eat your meal. And at that point, all the resources go back into the digestive tract so you can digest your food properly. Most people today, when they eat, are on the go. You know, one of the worst diets for digestion is the window diet, where you drive up to a window and get your food and then close your window and eat your food. You never really give your body a chance to digest. And there's actually a really important phase of digestion that happens before we start eating called the cephalic phase of digestion. And there's a lot of importance on our senses in that phase. The smell of food, the sound of food, the sight of food. You know, if I mention right now to you, picture biting into a lemon, even me just saying it, my taste buds start to, tingle and I start to salivate more. We all have that sensation. But if we get our food so fast and we eat it so fast, we never have a chance to turn on digestion. And we can't make that stomach acid that I was talking about is so important for absorbing and breaking down our food and absorbing all those minerals and nutrients. So number one is rest and digest mode. The second, again, we can't underestimate how important it is chewing your food. We forget to chew. Chewing is so important. It's our only chance really at mechanical breakdown of our food, and the rest is chemical. So if we can take care of a lot of the breakdown of our food just by chewing it properly, we don't need to secrete as many chemicals through the digestive tract. Now another thing, sort of an added bonus that a lot of people don't realize is that when you chew your food, you release a lot of enzymes if you're eating vegetables. You also mix our saliva with things called nitrates in our green leafy vegetables, and that creates a gas in our bloodstream called nitric oxide, which helps to dilate blood vessels and increase blood flow throughout the whole body. Isn't that cool? So chewing is so important. The first two, not that sexy, not that fancy, but so, so important, or else digestion isn't going to turn on it. It's not going to happen. Okay? The third one is, and to do that I got to get my friend's book. Well, I called him my friend. He probably doesn't even know I exist. But Michael Pollan's book, Food Rules. I love this book. There's so many great little tips in here. But one of the things he says is, eat at a table. A desk is not a table. Right? So when we're eating at our desk, our work desk, most often people will eat at, we're not in rest and digest mode, and we're still kind of in the zone. You got to stop. You got to get in the eating mode to turn on all the digestive juices. Okay. So rest and digest, chewing, eat at a table. The fourth one, we're going to get into some external things we can use to help stimulate digestion. And the first one is bitters. And if you're joining me late, you don't know this yet, but I did mention earlier that you can get a free bottle of Digestive Bitters if you make a comment or give a thumbs up or participate in this cast. We're going to be giving away a free bottle to those of you in the US or Canada that participate today. I have a question for you guys, for those of you who are joining me. Have any of you ever tried bitters? And if you have, what was your experience with that? Now, obviously, the name suggests that it's really bitter, and it is. And the reason why bitters work is typically in nature, things that are bitter have poisons in them. And evolutionarily speaking, to deal with those poisons, our body has learned to ramp up digestion substantially to deal with that poison. But there's medicinal herbs that obviously aren't poisonous, that are helpful, and they've got certain constituents in them, like alkaloids, for example, which taste very bitter. And when we take them, they stimulate digestion. So even at bars a lot of the time, there's bitter drinks, right? There's various cocktails with bitters that people have before meals, and traditionally, those have been used to stimulate digestion. But with herbs, we can use that. It's called Digestive Bitters, great for stimulating digestion. You might be surprised to know you actually have bitter receptors, not just in your mouth when you taste the bitter, but also in your small intestine. And there's bitter receptors all over our digestive tract in places where we don't sense taste. So these are very helpful for digestion. We go through a lot of it here in the clinic. We recommend it to a lot of people. I have a bitters, works great, but you can find bitters everywhere. They're all just as good, probably. Okay, so number 4 was bitters. The fifth one, and we spoke about hydrochloric acid a lot today and how a lot of people have low hydrochloric acid and what the dangers are of not having enough hydrochloric acid and suppressing hydrochloric acid. So number 5 is actually taking a supplement called betaine hydrochloride, which is a very acidic supplement. It's derived from beets, and it helps to increase the acidity in the stomach. And that can really help to ramp up digestion for those people who have been shutting it off by being go, 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 go all the time and never sitting down and eating a meal. I think we've all been guilty about this at one point in our lives. So, if you guys have questions, please put it in the chat box. I'm going to get to those in a moment. But the final way we can ramp up digestion and prevent things like burping, gas, upset stomach, diarrhea, all of those things that we see in the commercials, is an enzyme. So when we digest our food, there's little workers in there called enzymes that actually break down the food. Remember I said our first chance to break it down mechanically is through chewing. The rest is all chemical. Well, how do foods break down? And the way they do it is by these little workers called enzymes. And enzymes basically break things down and build things up in our body, but digestively speaking, it breaks things down. So sometimes our bodies are not making enough enzymes, and all we have to do is take a little bit of extra enzymes to help the digestion get its strength back up while we're doing all the other stuff. Resting and digesting, chewing, eating at a table, and taking time to eat a meal. You know, if we look back, way back in the day when our caveman and cavewoman ancestors ate their meals, if you think about it, they probably weren't on an iPhone, they probably weren't on their computer or reading or, driving in a car. What they were doing, in order to get food, part of the tribe went out with their spears or arrows or whatever they were using to hunt. They'd kill the animal. They'd bring it back. A fire would be made. Everyone would be hanging out together. Maybe someone would be playing a djembe or singing or something. They'd build the fire. That would take some time. Some people in the tribe would be processing the meat. Eventually, the fire would be ready. They'd cook the meat. They'd eventually eat the meat, and that was a really long process. Okay, so that's for meat. Think about vegetables, right? Gathering, right? We're talking about the hunters and gatherers. Like, how long would it take to pick a bowl of blueberries here in Canada, right? It would take a while. And then you don't just shove them all back quickly in 1 second. You sit down usually with the tribe and you're sharing all the foods that you've hunted and gathered over the day or over the hours. So that's the biology we're based on. And when we mess with that, when we try to speed things up, we affect our digestive tract. And digestion is really where all health begins and all health ends. So we need to make sure that that factory is in tip-top shape. There's also, a lot of really great herbs and spices that help to stimulate digestion. Whenever we use things like ginger and curcumin, coriander, even things like onions and garlic. There was a study, I'm just reading here, published in 2004 it was a review article in the Indian Journal of Medical Research. And they looked to see what types of herbs and spices actually stimulated which enzymes. So they found that ginger and curcumin increased pancreatic amylases, curcumin increased lipase activity, coriander increased disaccharides by up to 300%, onions also increased disaccharases, and ginger, fennel, cumin, curcumin, cayenne, black pepper increased disaccharidases. So all of these really powerful herbs and spices that have been used in a lot of different cultures also help to stimulate digestion. I know in my head, just thinking about Indian food, I think I get hungry because I miss it dearly. So those are my tips. Remember, rest and digest, chew, eat at a table, bitters, hydrochloric acid, and enzymes. So I'm just going to check in here to see if anyone has any questions. And thank you all so much for joining me here. Sandy's saying, hey Sandy, how's it going? Thanks for joining us. That she loves the Digestive Bitters. Has helped her tremendously compared to other brands similar. Thanks for the endorsement. And it's fresh tasting and really is quite yummy in my tummy. It is pretty bitter. The first time you taste it, it is quite powerful. And then Sandy's also asking, how does apple cider vinegar help, or does it? I typically use 1 tablespoon in a glass of water. Is this enough to change the acidity in the stomach? Yeah, it helps a little bit. I mean, that's typically why people will try apple cider vinegar, and we see it as a remedy a lot on the internet. It does increase the acidity in the stomach. Now, you have to understand that the acidity of the stomach is so powerful that if you took that acid and put it on your skin on the outside of your body, it would burn a hole right through. And we have certain protective mechanisms in the stomach lining. We have like a mucus layer, which is really important. We have bicarbonate that's actually secreted there to help neutralize the stomach acid right at the stomach. And we have blood flow is really important for the stomach as well in order to help with tissue regeneration. So apple cider vinegar might help a little bit, but if you want to go therapeutic, you might want to jump to things like the betaine, hydrochloride, the bitters, and even some enzymes. I have a question here from Simran. How is bitter melon? You know what? I've tried it once. I'm not sure if you're asking me how it is for digestion or how it is it tastes, but I did have it once at a potluck. It's extremely bitter. But it works by the same principle as the digestive bitters, as I was talking about, right? It stimulates digestion, right? Typically in nature, it's those poisons that we think are going to harm us, and that's how our bodies develop this. I explained this earlier, that bitter is usually where the poisons are. We all have that experience where we pull something out of the fridge and it tastes bitter. And we think, oh, I think this is off. I think this has gone bad. I better not eat it. And that's our response. But of course, there's things that are bitter by nature. I like that name. Maybe I will use that in something. Maybe I'll write a song called Bitter by Nature. But and those stimulate our digestion. So there's lots of herbs that do that. One of the most bitter herbs that I know of is called gentian. The first time I tasted it, it was like overwhelming bitter. That's one of the herbs in my digestive bitters, but you can even get it by itself. Foods that have that bitter principle are also very great at stimulating digestion. So bitter melon, as you mentioned, Simran. dandelion leaf. There's various greens like arugula that has a bit of a bitter taste. And if we actually look back to the original wild lettuce, it's extremely bitter. And we've bred our lettuce to have less and less bitter because we like that crunchiness and we like the sweetness in food, but we don't like the bitter. Now, the unfortunate thing is bitter is where the medicine is. So as you start to breed foods to be less and less bitter, you're actually losing a lot of the medicinal constituents that are in those foods, and unfortunately, those foods become less powerful. There's a fantastic book that talks about how to find the best, most nutrition foods in the grocery store and in your farmer's markets, called Eating on the Wild Side. And you'd be surprised to know that a lot of the foods in your supermarket have been bred over many years to become sweeter and sweeter and sweeter and more tasty so that you buy them in the supermarket and eat them. The iceberg lettuce versus wild lettuce are two completely different beasts. They're just totally different. An iceberg lettuce is basically crunchy water without any nutrients in it. And wild lettuce is a very, very powerful herb. In fact, it's got wonderful anesthetic properties. So herbalists often harness that as a painkiller. It makes this, if you ever score wild lettuce, if you know how to identify it in the wild, there's this white substance that comes out of it. It's a very powerful anesthetic. So it's really cool what nature has to offer to us. Unfortunately, we always move away from what it intended for us, and that's when ill health happens. And nothing shows that more than what we spoke about today with digestion. And if we want to prevent gas, bloating, indigestion, we need to stick to some of those recommendations I mentioned: rest and digest, chewing your food, eating at a table, maybe going to some supplements if necessary. And then your digestion comes back online and it works for you. In Ayurvedic medicine, they call it the digestive fire. And I love to think about digestion as a fire because the hotter it burns, the better it's going to break down your food. How about that? So, thank you all so much for joining me this week for This Week in the Clinic. This has been super fun. Do we have any other questions while we're finishing up here? No questions? Well, I think we covered a lot today. This information is useless unless you apply it, so please apply this knowledge. Knowledge is power if it's applied. When it comes to eating our meals, we really have to think about it as a sacred time each and every time we have a meal, because if we don't set that time aside and we're not giving time to digest the food, that's where our sustenance comes from. If we're not getting our sustenance from our food over time, our body's going to suffer, and we're going to get all sorts of conditions, which I listed off earlier in today's video. So if you missed anything, you can go check back at what we talked about earlier on. We do have a contest for a free bottle of Digestive Bitters. You can find out how to become part of that by watching back in the video. We will be accepting entries for about a week, so feel free to post comments after this cast. Thank you all so much for joining me for This Week in the Clinic, Facebook Live. I hope to see you all again very soon. We've got some really exciting episodes coming up. And take care and have a fantastic day.